choosing to stand with wealthy CEOs instead of helping families afford food. In addition to competition, First Nations like Garden Hill need reliable all-weather roads to be able to bring in food and supplies. When will the Liberals stop subsidizing CEO profits, take on the grocery giants, and stand up for Northerners?
The Honourable Minister for Northern Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for her important question. We are working with provincial governments, with territorial governments, with Indigenous governments, with communities of the North to address the very real challenges that are in the North: isolation, lack of infrastructure, the high price of food and the high price of absolutely everything. With the partnerships we have, I'm confident that progress is being made, but there's so much more to do, and we will get it done.
Andrew. Next on the list is the Honourable Member from Spadina, Fort York, but I understand that the member is having a difficulty. I'm going to ask him if he could just make sure that he could select the right microphone on his screen so that the interpreters will be able to have the proper sound. And I'll give the Honourable Member a couple of seconds to do so. Gonna just hold on for a second. I'm afraid we're going to have to come back to the member on another day for him to ask this question so that we could work out this technical difficulty. And so brings to the end of question period. If for honourable members who would like to listen, I have a ruling which I would like to make, or a statement. La présidence.
The chair. Sorry, I'll just wait for all members to leave quietly.
And if I could ask all members who could hear my voice to say shh. La présidence souhaite.
The chair would like to take a few minutes to share with the House some reflections on the deliberations since parliamentary work resumed at the end of January, and it's very relevant today. Since I was elected to the chair, I've had as a mission to work collaboratively within this location, and I have received feedback and support from the whips, which has allowed me to improve the situation a bit, and I am grateful to them for their efforts.
I've also noticed that the vast majority of exchanges during the sitting day are productive and worthy of our institution. And for this, I express my gratitude to all, as it is incumbent on all of us to elevate the quality of our proceedings. That being said, there has been a slow but steady increase in language and expressions that have been perceived to be inflammatory. The Chair wishes to address this as we move towards the spring session. During key moments, remarks have at times gotten too close to the limit of what is considered respectful and courteous, or even of good taste. Other interventions have clearly crossed the line of unparliamentary language. As a result, proceedings were often interrupted by a chair's interventions or by points of order generated by the conduct of members from all sides of the House. Dans certains cas,
in some cases, the Speaker has felt that expressions or statements were non-parliamentary. They demanded the withdrawal of the offensive language or apology to be made. In these cases, the Chair judged that the file was closed and the House resumed its work, rather. There were other instances when the Chair issued warnings to encourage members from not using some terms, even these terms were not unparliamentary in themselves. They encouraged disorder. It would be useful for all to avoid them.
On other occasions, the Chair has ruled that something was considered a matter of debate. When a Chair rules that a particular statement is a matter of debate, the Chair is saying that there is a debatable point in the balance, as opposed to a personal attack, the use of an easily identifiable unparliamentary term, or an exchange that results in disorder. Insofar as debate can on occasion be sharp and tense, even sometimes causing some members to take offense, it can still fall within the realm of an acceptable discourse in the House. The Chair will continue to make these distinctions when necessary.
Even when actions or terms are not unparliamentary in the truest sense of the term, the Chair and persons who observe our deliberations have noticed this type of behavior multiplying, and this clearly has a negative impact on our work. Since January, the Chair has heard terms that were excessively provocative and insulting. Such comments upset our deliberations and hurt members and slow down our work. They also throw discredit on the high functions that we have as members.
2012, one of my predecessors had observed at page 13,215 of debates, and I quote, "The House is also an inherently adversarial form that tends to foster conflict. As a result, sometimes emotions get the better of us, and we quickly find ourselves in situations marked by disorderly conduct. Tone and gestures can cause as much of a reaction as the words used in debate. Lately, it appears that at different times the mood of the House has strayed quite far from the flexibility, accommodation, and balance that ideally ought to exist in this place." End of quote. Peu importe que la présidence.
Whether the Chair deems it or not, or whether terms are unparliamentary or not, it is up to us as members to carefully choose our terms. I'd like to reiterate the observations that were made in October on page 17,888 of debate, and I quote, "The House is a place where freedom of expression is fundamental, where opinions are defended vigorously and with conviction. The Chair has to allow for expression of a large array of opinions, of the largest array of a personal opinion. Nevertheless, some members need to weigh their words and actions. End of quote.
And by this I mean myself and my fellow presiding officers, therefore encourages all members to take part in our proceedings, even vigorously and passionately, as the case may be, but to do so in a civilized and respectful manner in accordance with our own rules. The Chair will continue applying the rules fairly and forcefully when required, but in the end, it is every member's responsibility to exercise a reasonable degree of self-discipline and restraint while exercising their privilege of freedom of speech. I thank all members for their attention and for their continued efforts in improving decorum in the House. I am also now prepared to rule on the question of privilege raised on February 8, 2024 by the member for Regina Louvain concerning allegedly misleading statements made in the House by the Prime Minister and the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. In raising his question of privilege, the member alleged that the Prime Minister and the Minister of Environment and Climate Change had misled the House during oral questions on February 7 and 8, 2024, when they implied that he said there is no link between the carbon tax and food prices. The member quoted one of the statements he made in the House on February 6, 2024, to assert that, in fact, he had made such a link. In the member's view, this misrepresentation rose to the level of a prima facie question of privilege.
The question of privilege the Chair is being asked to rule on can be summarized as follows. Determining whether the statements of the Prime Minister and the Minister contain inaccuracies that would show they knowingly misled the House. When the member raised his question of privilege in the House, he rightly referred to the three conditions that must be met for the Chair to find a prima facie case of privilege. In my ruling of February 15th, 2024, I laid out those three conditions, and I would encourage members to review that ruling.
One of my predecessors said in a ruling on April 30, 2014, which can be found on page 4,753 of debates, and I quote, "Thus, it is not sufficient for members to simply make allegations based on their perceptions of what is or is not factually correct. Members must recognize and accept the existence of differences of fact and interpretation, which have always been a part of the normal cut and thrust of debate at question period." Unquote.
As for the question of privilege before us, I reviewed the statements of the Prime Minister and the Minister of Environment and Climate Change during oral questions on February 7th and 8th, 2024. The Chair could not find in those statements any grounds to conclude that those members knew their answers were misleading or that they intended to mislead the House.
The member for Regina Leuven was able to correct the record by explaining his intent and his point of view. In my opinion, we are therefore dealing with a matter of debate. Consequently, the Chair cannot find a prima facie case of privilege here. I thank all members for their attention. Daily routine of business, tabling of documents, introduction of government bills. Mr. Virani, seconded by Mr. Beach, moves to leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Enact the Online Harms Act, to amend the Criminal Code, the Canadian Human Rights Act, and an act respecting the mandatory reporting of Internet child pornography by persons who provide an Internet service, and to make consequential and related amendments to other acts. This motion is deemed adopted. Mr. Virani, seconded by Mr. Beach, moves that the bill be now read a first time and be printed. This motion is deemed adopted.
First reading of this bill, première lecture de ce projet de loi.
When shall this bill be read a second time? At the next sitting of the House.
Statements by ministers. Reports from interparliamentary delegations. Presenting reports from committees. The Honourable Member for Waterloo.
Standing order number 14. I have the honour to present in both official languages the 60th report of the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs regarding the membership of committees of the House. If the House gives its consent, I intend to move concurrence in the 60th report later this day.
Thank the Honourable Member. The Honourable Member from Edmonton West.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honour to present in both official languages the 14th report of the Standing Committee of Government Operations and Estimates, also known as the mighty OGO, of course, in relation to the motion adopted on Wednesday, February 21st, 2024, regarding a question of privilege. And the House gives its consent. I intend to move concurrence in this report later this day.
I thank the Honourable Member. The Honourable Member from Mississauga East, Cooksville.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have the honor to present in both official languages the 16th report of the Standing Committee on Finance entitled Shaping Our Economic Future, Canadian Priorities. And I want to thank the Finance Committee Clerk, Alexandre Roger, Analyst Joël Malo, Michael Lambert-Racine, Brett Capwell, and Mirab Karsi, Committee Assistant Linda Goudreau, the whole team of interpreters, technologists, and staff of the committee, and of course, all the members of the committee, witnesses, department officials, for their hard work in getting this report complete. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
Mr. Speaker, Conservatives are presenting a dissenting report because in this report, it doesn't recommend reducing the out-of-control deficit spending by this Liberal NDP government that drove up inflation and interest rates. It doesn't address Canada's declining GDP that's been declining since September 2022, and it's lower than it was in 2018. It also doesn't recommend axing the carbon tax scam or reversing any of the Liberals' other tax increases. Canadians are in a cost of living crisis and are getting poorer. After 8 years of this Liberal NDP government, this Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Common sense Conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. We would like to thank the committee staff, the clerk, the analysts, and witnesses for their work on the pre-budget consultation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank the Honourable Member. The Honourable Member from Scarborough-Guildwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have the honour to present in both official languages the following